But even before that, when I was 11 years old, my dad died of a massive heart attack in my arms. It took him about 4 hours to die. And I had watched the medical doctors work with my dad with no help over the previous couple months. When I was 14, my mom died of a massive heart attack, and by the time I was 16, I was diagnosed with having heart deformities myself. The doctors actually diagnosed me with valvular deformities of the heart. They said that my heart valves from birth were deformed, that they would not pump the blood correctly through my heart, my chambers would flood at the wrong time, and that if I didn't have surgical correction by the time I was 20, I'd most likely be dead. They said that the heart, the way it malfunctioned, would not be able to pump blood to an adult body. And I knew they were right, because I was feeling horrible. I was finding that every day I would have pain in my chest, I would have pain radiating down my left arm, I would have massive palpitations to where I would lose my peripheral vision, and I would pass out sometimes 2-3 times a day. So I was in an outpatient clinic at a hospital, and I asked them, could I be helped by any other means besides surgery? Because obviously at 16 I was very scared of the thought of having open heart surgery. And they said no, and I said, what about herbs? My great aunt was a German gypsy herbalist, healed the family of the common cold and that type of thing. And they said absolutely not, there was no herbs that would help. And I said, what about food? I had seen health food stores, or exercise. I knew people exercise helped. They said, for your condition, nothing will help. They said, unless you have the surgery, that's it. So I was taking drugs that they suggested. I was in the outpatient clinic at the hospital. I met another young man who had the same problem, and we talked about it, and he was scheduled for his surgery a few weeks before mine. Well, he died on the table, and when I heard that news, a wave of fear went over me from the tips of my toes to the top of my head, and I realized that I was very ill, I needed help, but sawing my rib cage in half and sticking a knife in my heart didn't sound like a healing experience at all. And I walked. I walked from the hospital. I had a lot of fear, but fear can be a tremendous motivational tool to help people change, and it certainly was for me. So the first person I ran into was a Zen Buddhist monk, and he said, eat less red meat, it's better for your heart. Hey, at that point, I would have taken donkey manure mixed with battery acid if I thought it would help. So I stopped eating red meat. And I came from a German family, blood for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert. And so it was a bit difficult at first. But hey, when you have that much fear, when a doctor tells you you're going to die, I was willing to do anything. And so I stopped eating red meat, and I felt a little better. And then eventually someone else told me, well, chicken, turkey, even though they have maybe less fat or less cholesterol, they're still not good for your heart. So I became at that point what I call a lacto-ovo vegetarian, which basically means that all I ate was eggs and dairy products. I would have cheese omelets for breakfast and a glass of milk, a milkshake and a toasted cheese sandwich for lunch, and probably some dairy for dessert. And I was still feeling tremendously better just on that dietary change, but then learned that there was massive amounts of saturated fat and cholesterol in dairy products, and at that point I became what's called a vegan, or a pure vegetarian, meaning that I ate only fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts, and seeds. And it was a bit startling at first. I remember looking in my refrigerator and there was nothing in it. And so I lost some weight, panicked, but eventually got the hang of it. And I felt tremendous. My incidence of my heart problems had gone down dramatically. And then I was told that I needed to exercise to have a healthy heart. So living in New York, I decided to start studying the martial arts. I figured that I could learn how to protect myself from muggers and at the same time do some cardiovascular exercise. So I got involved in the martial arts. I also learned that I had to open my elimination channels. I was having about 1 bowel movement a week. Seemed fine to me because I remember that's what my dad had, was 1 bowel movement a week. And so I had to learn how to clean and rejuvenate and strengthen my elimination channels. And also, I realized that my family, I call it 1950s Leave It to Beaver dysfunctional, but my family wasn't the most psychotherapeutic correct group. And we argued a lot at the dinner table. We all had indigestion. And I had to go through some emotional healing, too, because I learned that that was a very important part of my heart being well. Nobody has a healthy heart who is hateful. You have to learn how to give love and receive love if you want your heart to be healthy. The long and short of this is, at the end of 3 years, I went back to the hospital. They put me through 2 stress tests, electrocardiograms, x-rays, and they said that my heart valves were perfect. And they said that it was a miracle. And I said, it wasn't a miracle. I said, I did a lot of work. I took herbs. I ate different foods. I went through exercise. I got involved in psychotherapy. And they said, that wouldn't do it. They said you had a spontaneous remission. But I knew they were wrong. I knew that I had healed myself. And even in the process, I was doing such a good job. People were knocking on my door, first friends and relatives, and then just the general public, because they knew I had something. And basically, what I had just done is changed my lifestyle to be healthier. And so that was my first introduction into natural healing.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. A few years later, while I was preparing, working in a lab, making herbal preparations, we had a tremendous explosion, and a 5-gallon container of boiling oil in flames spilled all over my right hand. And this is my hand here. It spilled and covered my hand. I was burnt severely. After a couple days, I realized that I had done damage that I didn't even know how to repair to my hand. So I went to a friend of mine, a colleague who's a doctor, and he said, you need to see a burn specialist. And he gave me the name, and I went. The burn specialist examined my hand and said that I had 4th-degree burns, the worst possible burn. He said that all the tissue was gone right to the bone. And I said, it doesn't look that way to me. And at that point, he took a tweezers and he pulled the tissue off right here on my finger, and it opened up just a charred black bone. In fact, I have some pictures for you of this. And it was just charred bone. The tendons, the ligaments gone, the muscle gone, Amazing. Just charred bone. My entire thumb casing came right off, nail, everything, tissue, muscle, everything. It was pretty ugly. I went to see the burn specialist, and he said, well, you have 4th-degree burns. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, what that means is that all the tissue is gone right to the bone. The tissue's dead. And he said, you need a skin graft. And I said, why? And he said, because skin can't grow from thin air. He said, it just can't grow from thin air. He goes, and since all your skin's dead, we need to graft skin onto there. And I thought, okay.